Well, good afternoon, currency traders. Let's get into a currency recap here. Joe with you here on the 10th of October. It's Thursday already. I can't believe how fast these weeks go sometime. I've got my 2 cents. You guys know how this works. Make sure you take responsibility for whatever you follow along with all our courses. Let's break down the meaningful news of the day. Not a lot out there today, but we'll also technically break down the markets and see if we can't share trades if there's some out there.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
As we move into the market analysis, folks, you're going to see that we had what I refer to as our push-pull days, which is corrective action in currencies that have been moving in one direction and they decide to kind of pull back. But overall, not a lot of change. Let's get to it. So the US CPI comes in flat. And what I mean by that is the Fed has already taken its first action with a half basis point cut. And we know they're back and forth as a collective on whether they should cut another 50 or 25. Well, today the CPI comes in line with the previous. It was expected to drop a bit, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the markets didn't do anything. And I still think there's a lot of strength there in the equities when it comes to U.S. markets. And even if that number was a little bit off, they would have been flat. So no big changes in the currency movement overall. We saw the Kiwi, and we saw it drop. We saw a hawkish approach when it comes to New Zealand and their economy moving forward. But once again, as always, things bounce. So the movement overall is simply just corrective action. However, there are pairs out there that can be traded. What's tough about it, folks, it just depends on how you catch them. Well, what I mean, well, we'll get there in a second. Yen up 0.27, the dollar down 0.24. So that could have been something that we could have kind of paired together, but it's an absolute coin flip because we do not know when these currencies will correct. Franc has been showing some pretty good strength, up 0.31%. Euro and the pound continue to slide a little bit. Canadian dollar slid a little bit more, and I don't know if that had a lot to do with what I'm seeing in oil, but it's been super difficult, folks, to try to follow along with oil in light of what's going on overseas, and Canadian dollar is an absolute victim of that and eating up all the collateral damage because it's, I don't know why, but they've pegged it to oil. Aussie, a little bit of a bounce. And of course, the Kiwi bouncing in light of a pretty good move to the downside when it comes to its policy. Not much to really look into past that. Oil, there it is, 3.47 higher. This thing is up and down. My suggestion is to steer clear of that. Gold up 0.87. That could be because of the discontent, or I should say the arguments going on with the Fed when it comes to U.S. dollar. However, the equity markets do not seem to really care. Crypto flat, which is interesting. Crypto's actually been sliding lower. Another one that's pretty difficult to gauge. But overall, if I was going to make a trade on it, it would probably be to the bear side, just in light of what I've seen lately. S&P and the world index, look at that, absolutely flat. Not much going on. Bitcoin itself dropped just shy of 1.25%. But look at Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, even down 0.65% on Litecoin, Litcoin, whatever you want to call it, is not that big of a move. Overall, nothing's really changed when it comes to the equity markets. Above the 20, above the 50, 2050 slope looking great. This is a +3 chart. I haven't seen a chart this strong in quite a while. It's been working out, and it continues to work out. So I'm not going to make any changes to it. I know a lot of traders talk about a hesitation, which with on the equity markets, folks, when it comes to stocks and options, we love the hesitation after a breakout. There's opportunity for sideways to up trades in this area. However, there is no room for bearish sentiment. So if you're trying to counter trend trade or fade this, please don't. You're probably going to get hurt. What do we got left on the docket? Well, not much. The only thing I can see here is the Canadian unemployment change, and then the PPI on the U.S. side, which is not going to be relevant. But take a look at the CPI numbers. We're in line with previous. And I always laugh, folks, personally, CPI month over month versus the CPI core month over month versus year over year. Okay, whatever. I mean, you want to break it down in 10 different ways, that's fine. But when I see something in line, when you have a Fed that's trying to look for a soft landing, it'd be nice to see it fall, maybe at the rate, or I should say contract at the rate that they would like. But in line is pretty darn good. It's not increasing. I mean, we just cut 0.5 basis points, so you'd expect it might stimulate economic activity amongst the consumer, and it really hasn't, at least when it comes to the impact on price. So is it a win? Well, it depends. Are you optimistic? Is it a loss? Well, it depends. Are you pessimistic? But overall, folks, it's pretty much a non-event. So with that being said, guys, let's just jump straight into our currency analysis. I'm just going to go quickly through what was relevant or important, or I should say what moved the most, because it wasn't much. First off, we jump straight into the yen, and you can see I'm just going to go straight velocity here. It's continuing to move sideways. What was tough for me is, I really like to increase or decrease currencies based on the way they move. But with the yen, it did have a little bit of a move higher. It did flip. It flipped the SAR as it moved lower, but it is increasing towards it. That's still a -1 on the SAR. That's pretty much flat on the RSI and flat as well on the moving average. So I'm just going to keep the yen as a -1, but there is a little bit of a consolidation action when you take a look at the range that it's set. But it really didn't give us too much opportunity. You can see it was actually up 0.25. So we take a look at the US dollar. What did the US dollar do? Well, it's been super strong. It's been nice to pair that against some of the weaker currencies. But, in light of what the Fed stance is and some of the members that kind of disagree with each other, it really didn't do anything. It put in a pretty good red candle there, but it didn't really change anything. So I'm just going to keep the US at a +2. I believe we had it at a +3, but I just see it kind of plateauing. I think if you really wanted to make the argument, folks, that's a pretty significant drop in the RSI there. So, this is positive, and the overall trend's positive, but that drop there says that it's at least consolidating, so I'm going to drop that down to a +2. Moving on to the franc. This is a fun one. What I like about the franc is that it had a pretty good move, and whenever you get an up move against a down move, I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to trade. The volatility on this has been kind of sneaky. It's a difficult one to read, folks, because the 4-hour chart's difficult. And I'll be honest, guys, I am not a hour-to-hour guy. I'm definitely comes from the equity side. So it's very difficult for me to go from a +1 on a velocity move and then the next day go to a -2. It makes no sense. It's the overall motion of the ocean. And what I'm looking at, folks, is, the velocity here is flat on that RSI that I had, but take a look at this move. Higher lows, higher highs. It flip-flops the SARs and it flip-flops, this RSIs back and forth. But overall, I guess if we want to score it for today, the SARs are plus. I'll give this a 0 because it's consolidated after a pullback. And then the RSI, we can just kind of throw that out. So I put the franc up to a +2. What I like the most about this on a velocity side is take a look at that. It actually busted out of an ascending triangle pattern. Now, if you were lucky enough to catch this and pair this strong against something weak, good for you. I've got a couple of traders that did. That's fine, but this is kind of the markets we're in. You just happen to cross it. There's really no way to really plan this. We talk about outperforming and underperforming currencies from day to day to day, but when you get something that can sustain 2, 3, 4 days in a row to the upside, like we've seen in the franc, all of a sudden you can pair it with something against like weakening and do pretty well. This is a very difficult way to trade. And I believe what Rob was talking about yesterday, which is I want to echo, is, man, you just got to wait for your set to come in. Other than that, you're just going to catch it kind of at luck. Let's move over to the euro. Another one that was moving higher, looked really strong. And guess what? It fizzled out. Flip the SAR. We got our moving average tipping. That RSI is decreasing. I was actually super nice about this and just put it at a zero. The reason being is because it still has this nice little surge going on. Now, if it can pivot here in the next little bit and we could get this RSI to slip above that 50, well, then I could actually move that back up into the +1 area. But for now, just a pretty aggressive correction on the volatility score, remember, showing that it's a little bit weaker. Pound down as well today. Same idea as the euro, pulling back. The SARS looks good, but then it flipped. But that moving average looks really good, even with that little bit of a hiccup here, a little bit of a slope there. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that to a 0. Corrective action. If you can identify day to day to day and understand that, hey, velocity doesn't change a pattern, it hesitates, then you will be a much better trader. So this is a hesitation. I put the pound at a 0 as well. The Canadian dollar, kind of getting beaten up, pushed around a lot because it's pretty pegged to oil. I do like this as something weaker. I do like the slope. Let's take a look at this. Folks, this is the velocity score. Flips over on the SARS. The SARS are negative. We've got a breakdown. More importantly to me, more importantly to whatever it is shorter term, it broke a price level. Not only did it flip the SAR, it turned this moving average. It broke down, but take a look at this RSI. That tells you momentum is definitely coming out of this. It was very easy for me to put this to a -2. Here's the Aussie dollar. It's been strong. It had its corrective move. I went ahead and decided to +1 because it decided to turn around. This RSI is right at that 50 level, and it's moving higher. I like the flip on the SARS. The moving average, it did slope a little hard there, but it's an aggressive corrective move. So I'm going to give it 0 to +1. I'm going to give it a +1 because it looks like it might be reemerging. Now we know that the Kiwi had some news on it, obviously, but take a look at the RSI. It's been basing. It's been trying to come back. A little bit of bounce here. Definitely the moving average is 0. The SARS have been flipped as well. So it's really difficult for me to kind of pull this off of that -2, -3 area. However, I went ahead and just bumped it up to that -1 because of this movement I've seen in the RSI as of late. So it came off the bottom. Sure, the moving average is turning. This is flipped, so I'm going to give this a plus. That's a 0, and that's a negative. So I'm going to give it a -1 overall. I really don't want to beat it down. So that's about all I've got there. So here's the scoring. Is what I got for today. A lot of stuff just kind of pulling inwards. I kept the cryptos over on that on the bear side there, but US dollar comes down from a +3 to +2. The Aussie moves a little bit higher from I think it was a -1 to a +2. The pound stays and the euro stays neutral. The yen goes up. The CAD drops. Not a lot of movement. So if you're lucky enough to actually catch a couple pairs together, you could take advantage of it. Now, since this is what we do each day, I got to at least put out what I'm kind of looking at. And it's going to be that problem that I've run into over and over again. What do I trade based on what's getting stronger and weaker? Well, it just depends on when it happens. So first off, let's take a look at one of the greater trades that actually set up, and that's definitely going to be the CAD franc. I had a couple of traders actually get into this, and this is one that if it wasn't on your radar, you wouldn't have caught it, but it was a beautiful rollover here, increased. It actually broke down. It looks like it's continuing. Really good trade. For you guys that really want to get into it, you got to be a little bit leery because there is a support level right there. So on the momentum wise, it's almost done. You can see the candles are shortening, but just make sure that you adjust your stops because it's a great trade and it's been working out. The trade that I wanted to trade was actually with the franc itself, was the franc yen. Sorry, folks, let me make sure I get this typed in right. The problem that I had is that both of them went up today, right? So if I get the franc that goes up and the yen that goes up, guess what? They don't really correlate. Or excuse me, they don't go in opposite directions. However, I still have my feelers out, and I do like this. I would like to see something drop. If that franc can continue to strengthen, remember, folks, it's been getting stronger very quietly. And we get another rollover on the yen. I'm really looking for this nice ascending triangle breakout, and that's about all I've got on my radar. What's been really frustrating, folks, is corrective action. We've got we've got currencies that are going to move up and down, and we got bad news and good news. But then when they all correct together, it really doesn't help. And in this situation, franc has been weak and the yen has been weak. That's the only thing that's on my radar as of, the last day or so. So overall, folks, it's simply a corrective move in the currency markets. The U.S. markets didn't really react at all. Things that are supposed to happen are happening. It's almost dull. I mean, it's awful that we do have things going on overseas, pushing and pulling over there, but the currencies themselves are not really reacting. So it's difficult to find pairs that go in opposite directions, especially with corrective action. So you got to be super patient. And if you do catch one, awesome. Good work for you. But it is rare and it's hard to do. So if it's on your radar and you take it, awesome. make sure that you adjust your stops or take profits accordingly. Follow your plan, play the relative strength and weakness. Right now, folks, I really have nothing for you when it comes to that. Proper position sizing as always. And hey, thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. See you, folks.